I love MMOs, and you're probably also loving MMOs, that's why you're watching this video, right? So recently I've been hearing a lot from the Elder Scrolls Online and World of Warcraft community about modern MMOs and that they suck and that they can't change their MMO because there's no other big MMO out there that's like really fun. I mean, Ashes of Creation looks quite promising, and New World is also maybe going to be really lit. I also pre-ordered this. I will give this game a shot as well. But yeah, MMOByte made this really interesting video called The Problem With Modern MMOs, and I'm actually curious on what MMOByte has to say about that, because like I have my own thoughts and reasons why I think that a lot of modern MMOs can keep up with the classic ones. But yeah, let's have a look at this video. And if you are new to this channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content. I'm covering mostly MMO games, and yeah, be prepared for more. So yeah, let's have a look.
Nostalgia goggles is a metaphor often used to describe a person's distorted view of how something in the past was actually much worse than they believe it was.
Oh, really?
Let's use Dragon Ball here as an example. Back when the anime was initially licensed for
my
distribution
childhood
within North America, the Ocean Group was brought on to dub it into English, with a lot of viewers being introduced to Dragon Ball via that specific cast of voice actors.
Something wrong? You seem like you're under a lot of pressure.
What is it? You seem like you're under a lot of pressure.
Later, when Funimation acquired the license to dub that into English, even though the Funny dub ultimately ended up being exponentially more professional and much closer to the original Japanese translation, people were left of the opinion that the Ocean dub was superior. And as such, many people consider fans of the Ocean dub to be under the effects of nostalgia goggles. This also applies to video games and more specifically MMOs. You've probably heard people continue to reminisce over how amazing Vanilla WoW or maybe even Ion 1.0 were. These were games that were released over a decade ago, back when new MMO releases were common and varied quite significantly in terms of...
You know why that also is? Like, I think that's also because if you're like used to something, and let's say something is like an innovation. So what happens if an innovation happens? You see something new and you get like really excited, and you're like, oh, this is so cool, this is so fun. And then it becomes a habit, just like with classic WoW, for example, or with like Dragon Ball, with like the voice acting, right? And you see an innovation, you get crazy impressed, and then you start to get used to it. And then something new comes, and then that's when you get those kind of goggles that he talks about, where you are like, oh, that's the nostalgic goggles. Hey, yo, I'm used to that. Like, I can't accept something new. I need to stick to what I'm used to. And I think the only way to like overpower this kind of feeling that some people have is if you bring out another innovation that excites, right? Because if you're like trying to use something that's like new and exciting, and you're trying to copy this and deliver it in a different format, basically, it will excite the person that is used to the previous one less, right? Like, let's say, for example, there was a World of Warcraft 2, but it uses the same engine and everything the same, like World of Warcraft Classic, that it wouldn't be as exciting as if there was like a World of Warcraft 2 with a brand new engine, a brand new, completely different plot, maybe completely new combat system, right? Because that would be an innovation.
Quality. Yet even though there were hundreds of MMOs released between 1995 through 2021, there exist several that truly stood out, that not only captivated the MMO audience, but also went on to stand the test of time. Games like Meridian 59, Tibia, Ultima Online, EverQuest, Anarchy Online, Dark Age of Camelot, RuneScape,
for so many years,
Online,
especially
EVE
RuneScape,
Online,
has been
Lineage
a
2,
blast.
MapleStory, Mabinogi, World of Warcraft, and much more recently, titles like Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy XIV, and The Elder Scrolls Online. These are all MMOs that offered experiences of an entirely separate caliber to what was
it's an innovation, something new. That's what I mean.
The topic of this video. Older MMOs are better than newer MMOs because developers back in the earlier days of the genre's inception
came up with new ideas,
more about making their dreams a reality.
That
creating
too.
worlds that could stand the test of time. These days, developers care more about creating a game that looks pretty and promises the world, yet fails to deliver any of it. This generation is full of bait and switch MMOs MMOs created with the sole intention of making as much money as they can before ultimately shutting down.
Microtransactions.
Who here recalls when the free MMO Elite Lord of Alliance shut down? What about when they relaunched as Warlords Awakening, requiring players pay to play the game as a buy-to-play MMO? What about Bless Online's free-to-play business model across Korea, Japan, and Russia, yet buy-to-play business model for us over here in the West? Or Stellia Online being free within South Korea, and then launching as a buy-to-play title over here after it failed to achieve success within its country of origin. Now, I'm under no illusion that there were predatory or even downright terrible MMOs developed at the same time as the aforementioned titles. 80,
Combat looks nice here, right? But
it
didn't live up to it.
Pay-to-win messes, much the same as they are now. The only difference was back then, we didn't really know any better. I started playing MMOs back in 2007 with...
That's also true, we didn't know any better. Because back then there wasn't so much competition. Like if you have only like a few MMOs to pick, they all are like breathtaking and they're all like wow. But if you have like, let's say, suddenly 100 different MMOs, right? Like it's not so much exciting anymore. And like the community that is into MMOs, they will spread also a lot and it will be spread thin. Only like a few MMOs that are like super outstanding. Like I can give you guys an example. Like, yeah, there were like some MMOs shown here that were like shut down. But if you look at like games, for example, like World of Warcraft, and you compare them to what you see here, it's a whole different feeling because the way your character looks, the whole world, the story, and that there are also like movies to it, that there was a strategy game to it. It's a whole different universe. That's the same with like Final Fantasy XIV, because Final Fantasy XIV like has previous games and stuff, and it's like a whole different world feeling. There's just so much lore, and people already maybe know the story or have watched like the Final Fantasy movie, because there's even a movie to that. And yeah, this is like whole different than if you try to on the side start like a brand new MMO and you're not like established, and there are like hundreds of others, because you have just so much competition. If you want to get big with an MMO game, you must find a niche, a certain topic or something that nobody has. Like if you make MMOs that all look like so similar, like some do here look very similar, of course they will not stand out. You need to make maybe like a freaking Harry Potter MMO, and there's actually a Harry Potter MMO coming. Like you need to make like a freaking big Harry Potter MMO, or a Lord of the Rings MMO, but with like a very deep plot or something. Like I think those kind of games could rock and be very cool modern MMOs. I'm actually really curious about the Harry Potter MMO, what it's gonna be like, because I've seen a trailer to it and it looks very interesting.
Tales of Pirates. This was a game that allowed you to purchase Rage Gems, Colossus Gems, and other items that you could forge into your weapons and armor from the cash shop. Yes, these were items that you could obtain in game as well, but where it could take players days, weeks even, to obtain even a few of these items, you could purchase 100 of them directly from the store for maybe $1,000 and be significantly more powerful than most of the other players on the server. Yet nobody ever really called pay to win, and we continue to play the game, attempting to compete with whales of that magnitude. As that was a PvPvE MMO, it was much more difficult to, granted.
I hate this monetization system
much more on
with microtransactions and a cheap game price, or even
but
free
pay
game.
to advance and pay to win were just so prevalent back then that nobody really cared. That is a type of business model that could not exist in today's society, where even paying for an XP scroll is considered by a large percentage of players as pay to win.
I actually don't think it's so bad with the
Problems
XP
with
pots
pay-to-win in
or
Tales of
scroll.
Pirates, you know what the game did right? Everything else. It offered players a large open world. The only loading screens that were present were if you went through an instance to a dungeon, or you needed to travel to another continent via teleport. You could freely run around the entire world on foot. You could even sail to different continents manually via ship. There were various different classes, a sense of progression. Heck, it even presented one of the greatest types of
the world
PvPvE
feeling was great, yeah.
I have ever experienced. PvPvE dungeons and raids. Dungeons and raids were open to all players, allowing for entire guilds to attempt to defeat dungeon and raid bosses while fending off other guilds. This presented so many opportunities for guilds to make alliances.
That's the same that they
guilds,
want to do with
formulate strategies
Ashes of
to
Creation,
secure
right?
raid kills, and meant that the community was more important than almost anything else in the game. Your reputation in that game was your life. If you did something, everyone on the server knew. If you defeated another guild in a dungeon, everyone would know. This was, in my opinion, one of the most amazing PvPvE systems that I had ever experienced.
And that's true because you give players a goal to achieve. Like they have like a goal suddenly. If you make an MMO without like any real goals, or you don't have anything that can show your progress, or you can like increase in rank or something, then you're like asking yourself, why should you try so hard to maybe beat a dungeon faster than somebody else? I think it's good to offer an MMO competition, like a competitive system where you can like rank with others or something. Yeah, like if you look at, for example, World of Warcraft, like world's first raids and stuff like that, I think this was really, really cool that there was such a thing, because you gave like the hardcore players something that they can enjoy. But you have to be a bit careful with this though as well, because you don't want to have a too competitive system, because you want also casual players to play the game. But if you're like this separate kind of area where you can see like your rank and it doesn't affect your grind or something in the game or the other achievements, then I think it's completely fine. Like there needs to be some competitive system as well with like ranking, that's my opinion.
It's something that I have not had the pleasure of experiencing since. Now, comparatively speaking, MMOs these days just don't do anything remotely innovative like that. What MMOs have released in the last 4 years? Blast
Some
Online,
are too casual as
DK
well.
Online, Guardians of Ember, Warlords Awakening,
Need to find balance.
Soulworker, Closers, Critica, PSO2 New Genesis, Swords of Legends Online, Maple Story 2.
I only know half of the games, to be honest.
Online, Crowfall, and you know what, probably a few others that I've missed. But that's because they left such a negligible impression on me that I don't even recall
like
their
invisible.
release. Out of all of the MMOs released over the last several years, do you know how many of them retain over 10,000 concurrent players? No.
You know what's funny? When I ask like my friends, like my IRL friends, about what MMOs they know, they will say stuff like Elder Scrolls Online, World of Warcraft, RuneScape, Final Fantasy 14 Online. Like, it's actually funny because most of my friends, they only know like 3, 4, or 5 MMOs. And seldom I will meet people that know like at least 6 MMOs. And that's actually so funny, because like I have a lot of friends that are heavily also into gaming and that they don't know more than like 5, 6 MMOs. That's actually something that makes you think, right?
None. Bless Online shut down. DK Online had a 24-hour peak of 4 players playing. Guardians of Ember shut down. Warlords Awakening shut down. Soulworker had a 24-hour peak of approximately 5,000 players. Closers had a 24-hour peak of 100 players.
100?
Critica had a 24-hour peak of 200 players. New Genesis had a 24-hour peak of a little shy of 7,000 players. Swords of Legends Online has been struggling to maintain above 4,000 concurrent active players.
Oh no.
Maple Story 2 shut down. Bless Unleashed just launched, so it's really.
And then nobody wants to stream this, and the game dies even faster. Because you need streamers to keep a game alive too.
For the drama surrounding that game right now. The reason these MMOs have failed is down to the fact that at the end of the day, they're just not doing anything to set themselves apart from the rest of the competition. Who wants to spend their time in a new tab target MMO with worse combat than WoW or Final Fantasy 14?
Oh yeah, that looks actually clunky.
A fraction of the total content. Or better yet, who wants to dedicate their life to a game that's entire end game consists of running the same single raid and 2 dungeons? Because
like
let's be honest here, new MMOs all have the very same issue. When they launch, they do not really have much, if any, endgame content at all. MMOs slowly build up content as they continue to exist. Final Fantasy 14, Guild Wars 2, The Elder Scrolls Online, they weren't all filled with endless time sinks like they currently possess. Yet players expect new MMO releases to have the same level of content. I mean, let me take a moment here to impose this question. Would you stick around in a game when there is nothing to do once you hit level cap? You wouldn't, right?
No.
You'd grow bored rather quickly, and you'd move on to something that can retain your attention.
That's the issue now with Valheim. You guys remember how like Valheim was like crazy hyped? And I love Valheim still. And I still from time to time log back into Valheim. But this is the issue with Valheim. Like sometimes you have like games that are like really, really good. And they're like really going viral. But once you hit endgame, they're like crazy long breaks maybe. This happened also with World of Warcraft. There have been like periods of time where for over a year there was no expansion, no new stuff added, and people were already like speeding through stuff, and it took them like not even a month and they were already at end game. So a new expansion comes out 3-4 weeks later, you have the first players that have beaten and gotten all the achievements. Then after 3-4 months, the majority of players that were there at launch, they have beaten the whole game 3-4 months later, even the casual ones. And then like people are waiting for more than a half year for a new update, and then after like a half year of waiting, they just get bored of the repetitive stuff, doing the same things all over again, and they're just gonna leave the game or try something else. And the thing is, if then a new expansion comes out, there are some people that are not coming back then because they already got attached to like maybe a new game, or maybe even they changed their game genre. I've seen people, they played MMOs and they moved to like shooting games and stuff, or strategy games, and they didn't come back to MMOs. So yeah, you need to keep a retention of your players. If they are leaving and they try other games, like only a handful will come back. And that's also so important in the life cycle of an MMO for sure.
MMOs won't be able to do that. Not to the same degree already pre-existing established games can, which leaves the games and subsequently their worlds entirely barren. But the reason for this is because once again, the MMOs specifically are doing nothing innovative to set themselves apart from the rest of the genre. If an MMO legitimately provided something exponentially different to anything else available, people would flock to it in droves.
Yeah.
Take Black Desert as an example. Black Desert is arguably one of the best looking MMOs in the genre.
It looks nice,
also
but it's
has
too
some of the
grindy. I hate
best
that.
action combat within the genre to date. But is a pretty game with fun combat enough to warrant the active participation of millions of players,
It's too
especially
grindy.
given that it's a buy-to-play MMO? No, it's what BDO offers players concurrently to the combat and appealing aesthetic that truly make this game a remarkable experience. An enormous world filled with content, varying monsters, things to see, exploration, world bosses, PvP, life skills, sailing, the sheer freedom to do what you want.
Combat is
at pretty
amazing
much
in
your own
BDO.
pace without the overwhelming pressure of remaining competitive by running weekly raids with groups of players to keep up with the item level grind is something more developers should take note of. By providing players so many unique facets, so many different methods to entertain themselves, they've created a game, a world for players to enjoy that is different to the traditional MMO formula. But the vast majority of MMOs, and by association MMO developers, no longer seem to possess the same levels of passion that developers decades ago did. During the genre's inception,
That's embarrassing.
every developer wanted to bring their vision to fruition. They wanted to leave their mark on the genre. They wanted to build on it, establish themselves as one of the founders, to have their name, their game go down in history, to leave a legacy. And many MMOs did. Many developers did. Richard Garriott, Ralph Koster, Brad McQuaid, Jeff Kaplan, and even the legendary voice of Thrall himself, Chris Metzen, are all people that instantly spring to mind. Their passion, their visions helped shape the entire genre that we are all a part of today. Take a look at MMOs released within the last decade and tell.
You know what, guys? And what's also important for an MMO, like you want to have an MMO that can continue. Like let's say, for example, someone invents like a brand new MMO. Like you need a good story that you can also continue. If you mess up with the story, yeah, you can have like the nicest combat in the world, you can have the best looking characters, but you need to create a franchise with an MMO if you want to last for another decade or so, right? Because like I give a good example, and that's an example from, let's say, Final Fantasy XIV, but also World of Warcraft is the same. Elder Scrolls Online also has that. If the companies wanted to, they could make a World of Warcraft 2. They could make a Final Fantasy 17 or 18 that's also online. And they could make a Elder Scrolls Online 2. And why can they do that? Because they already created such a fascinating, interesting world with so much deep lore that now from the lore you can pick like small aspects and turn like one aspect into a whole new MMO. Like let me give you an example. In World of Warcraft, for example, you have like the Night Elf lore. And they could make like a freaking expansion or World of Warcraft 2. That is like mostly about like the night elves have trouble and there's like this one tribe from the trolls and they have like war. Like you can just come up with some very, maybe at first sounding strange plot, but because you have so much deep lore and like smaller pieces you can put together, you can create like a very interesting new experience, right? Even though you have something old already. And that's the same with like Final Fantasy. You had like what is it? Final Fantasy 11, I think, was online too, right? Or maybe I'm wrong. Correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong. And they actually, what they did from Final Fantasy 11, they took the Lalafels, they took the Mikote, they took all the races and everything, and they made Final Fantasy 14 based off what they knew or had from Final Fantasy 11. And they renamed them a bit though. But if you have played like the previous online version of Final Fantasy, like Final Fantasy 11, then you suddenly realize, oh, that's so familiar, but it's still new. And that's the thing. Like, you want this in MMO so you can make like a continued version, like a new game, right? Like maybe 8 years after the first MMO, right?
Take a look at MMOs released within the last decade and tell me how many of the names of the developers you recognize. Now, this is not a direct attack on new MMOs or current generation.
They haven't established
There
themselves,
are some
that's why.
fantastic ideas
If you're established and
like
you're famous,
Protocol,
people will know you.
Ashes of Creation, New World, Riot's League MMO.
I have so
and
many hopes
RH2
for
coming in
Ashes
the
of
future.
Creation,
These
please.
MMOs might revolutionize, might revitalize the genre.
Blue
They might
Protocol
offer
also
something
looks nice
entirely
though.
different that takes the genre by storm, leaving all of the competition in the dust.
Yeah.
It's unlikely, but it is definitely plausible. The passion that was once a major selling point for the genre just does not seem to really be present anymore.
True.
Which kind of echoes throughout the player base as well. Players are, more or less, sick of new MMOs because they're just so generic. They last a week, maybe a month if we're lucky, and then they just go and fade into memory.
That's what I'm worried
MMORPGs
about.
just no longer seem to possess that same sense of longevity that they once did, and that's a shame. In 2021, moving into 2022, the MMOs that I am actively playing are Final Fantasy XIV,
Same
which
here.
released back in 2013, Guild Wars 2 that released back in 2012.
I haven't tried it yet.
And the odd free MMO here and there merely to obtain footage for videos. That is the state that the genre is in right now. There's just nothing that really captivates or truly excites players at this point, or in the immediate future. Genshin managed to for a few months, and while there are still millions of active players playing that game, at the end of the day, we all want a new MMO to play. Blue
Yeah.
Protocol, Tower of Fantasy, Ashes of Creation, New World.
Well, I remember when Genshin Impact launched, a lot of people thought this was going to be a freaking open world MMO and stuff, but it's more single player than freaking MMO, and there's like this resin cap, right, that you can't like do more dungeon runs unless you freaking spend money, and oh my gosh, that's so annoying. Yeah, I think from like all the new games that are coming, the only ones that maybe have a chance are either Ashes of Creation or perhaps New World. Like, I think Ashes of Creation and New World from all the new upcoming MMOs, they seem to me like the most promising ones. However, Blue Protocol I think also looks pretty nice. Maybe this could also be fun, because this looks to me like some are going to laugh at this, but this looks to me like how people imagine Genshin Impact to be when it first released. I think Blue Protocol is what people wanted from Genshin Impact. So maybe Blue Protocol has a chance as well. Let's see.
Maybe something entirely new, yet unannounced, who knows. But at the end of the day, the reason we are all playing old MMOs like WoW, like RuneScape, like Final Fantasy XIV is because they are just better than their newer alternatives.
Yeah,
There's
the world
absolutely
feeling and
no
everything,
discussion,
combat system,
no
lore,
argument that
everything
can
comes
prove
together.
otherwise.
Someday soon, I'm gonna make it.
Oh wow. Yeah, I actually totally agree with what was said here. You need to leave a mark, you need to leave a good impression with an upcoming MMO. One that lasts. If you have like low numbers like some of those MMOs had that were like shown there, you're not gonna be able to survive for too long, because you also need to attract people either from like freaking magazine companies or from like, I don't know, maybe on Twitch, like some bigger streamers, to actually keep advertising your game. If you release a game and it's somewhere on the shelf in a freaking games shop, people maybe pass by just by it, and they're not even gonna grab it or look at the game usually, because there are so many other games that are more famous. So to keep a game alive, you need a good community that keeps making the advertisement for you, because there's like mouth to ear advertisement by players going to their friends and relatives and saying, oh, I'm playing this game and this is so much fun. We have like content creators and streamers. There's like freaking magazines, and they can like cover your game and say, oh, there's like this new patch of, let's say, Blue Protocol, and there's like this new raid now or boss or whatever. And if like magazines, there's like mouth to ear advertisement and content creators, like the games can stay alive, and you can make like new patches, new expansions, maybe a version 2 of the game. Like that what's actually happened with Final Fantasy, because there was a, I think it's 11, right? Let me actually check, because I'm not sure if this was Final Fantasy 11 or 10 that was like the online one. I think it was 11. Let me just check, because I don't want to say something wrong here. Oh yeah, this was Final Fantasy 11. I was actually correct. Yeah, that was, yeah. And they've taken so much from this and made Final Fantasy 14. Final Fantasy 14 was a big success. And I'm pretty sure Elder Scrolls Online and World of Warcraft can do the same with like Elder Scrolls Online 2 or World of Warcraft 2, or even give it a brand new name and just take aspects of the previous game. But I really have my hopes for like Ashes of Creation, even New World. New World seems also really fun. The only thing that I'm worried about with New World is the monetization system. You just buy the game. There's no subscription. And what I always fear about games that doesn't have like a subscription monthly, like a monthly subscription, that they have a good start, but after a year or so, because not enough money is flowing into the game, that they're just gonna stop releasing expansions or stuff. Like New World will be really fun for at least a year, I'm pretty sure. But I'm wondering what will happen in the future, because there's no subscription. They should have added this to New World. But yeah, it would definitely be good for a year, and we still have Ashes of Creation. And Final Fantasy 14 will get more updates, so I will definitely stay committed to Final Fantasy 14, play it more. On the side, I will try out other MMOs. I've already pre-ordered New World. I will also stream this on Twitch and YouTube and make videos to it from time to time. I will give Ashes of Creation a shot, because I really enjoy what I saw so far from it. And I was also on Asmongold's stream when he was like trying Ashes of Creation. It looked really fun to me. The world feels great. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to those 2 new MMOs. And I'm also looking forward to Blue Protocol. But yeah, if you guys are new to this channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content. And I would really appreciate if you like this video. And also leave a comment on how you feel about the state of MMOs. If you agree that modern MMOs suck, what you are hoping for the future of MMOs. If there's any MMO that you have your eyes on that you think could be a great MMO that can last for a decade, yeah, let me know in the comment section. So yeah, that's it guys. Please stay all safe and healthy, and I will see you guys next time.